Hello there. It's almost the middle of October and my hat's on, my jacket's on, because in Scotland, winter is here. It's freezing already. So, I was going to go out and about with Lassie today, but I can't because the weather's too bad. So I thought what I'd do instead is take you through some of the things that you can do in the editing suite to make your footage look just a wee bit better. Now, you've probably watched a million videos on how to do the 5 most cinematic moves, and here's some secret tricks on how to make the thing go left, and here's a wee hack on if you push the down stick down, the drone goes down. Right, there's a million videos showing you hacks and tricks and secrets. It's not really a secret. If you put the stick up, the drone goes up. If you go left, the drone goes left, right? You know that by now. You've had your DJI Mini 2 for almost a year. If you bought it when it first came out, you've had it for at least a few months. And I'm sure you've watched these hacks and tricks and secret videos to death. They're not telling you anything new. You can go out there, you'll set your settings correctly, you'll fly nice and smoothly, and you'll come back and you'll still not be happy with your footage. So here's a few things that you can do just to tweak it and maybe make it look a wee bit better. Now, I use Final Cut Pro as my video editor and I'm used to the way it works. I've kind of just taught myself by watching YouTube videos, so I'm no expert, and some of the things that I do are probably ham-fisted and not a very good way of doing things, but it works for me. So I'm going to take you through a step-by-step process on how I make any footage that I've recorded look just a wee bit better. If you don't use Final Cut Pro, the principles that I'm using in this video are exactly the same, and you could probably find all of the features in your own video editor. But if you do use Final Cut Pro, you're probably using a lot of these things already, and I'm sure you'll find the layouts familiar. I'm not trying to teach anybody to suck eggs, I'm just trying to show you the way that I go through making some very, very basic, simple changes to make your footage just pop a wee bit. So here we go. This is Final Cut Pro, and this is my editing suite of choice. So I've loaded in a clip that I've taken, and if I play that clip back, I think to myself, oh, that looks pretty good. Filmed in 4K, got the exposure levels right. If I was using a filter, it seems that I've chosen the right filter. It's all looking pretty good, but it doesn't look as good as it could, does it? I can make a few adjustments. Even though I did everything right when I was out there filming, it can still be improved a little bit. And I'm going to show you how to do that with a few simple moves today in Final Cut Pro. If you use a different editor, the principles that I'm going to show you today are exactly the same in any editor. So the first thing I'll do is I'll duplicate this clip, and I'll only make changes one clip so we can compare it with the original after I've finished. So the first thing you want to do before you make any adjustments is change your workspace and get a workspace that's easy to work with. And that one is the colour and effects. So we've got the colour and effects workspace, which is just easier to make these changes in. And these are the 4 dials that you get up with this particular workspace. We're not going to use all of these today, we're only going to use the Luma and the RGB Parade. So if you go into View, you can select 2. Either the 2 side by side or 2 one above each other. I prefer this one. And I want the Luma, but I don't want the vector scope here. So I'm going to change that one to the waveform. And then I'm going to adjust the size of the page to suit me a little bit better so I can see things here more clearly, because these are going to assist me in making the changes I need rather than just using my eyes. So the next thing you want to do is make sure you go over here onto the colour inspector. And the colour inspector is where you can make your changes. This is the default in Final Cut Pro, and it's a bit clunky. So to make any changes, I like to go in and add on the colour wheels. So let's do that. There's the colour wheels. Now, you might be thinking that, oh, I'm clicking off of this video right now because that's just too complicated, it's beyond me. It's not, it's simple, and I'm going to show you, I'm going to break it down for you. You're seeing 4 dials just now, and it might look a bit overwhelming, but they're all identical, they do exactly the same things. And I'm going to show you what to do. This dial is the master, and any changes you make with the master will affect the entire clip. In the shadows dial, any changes you make will only affect the darker sections, the shadows. In the highlights dial, any changes you make will only affect the lighter sections or the highlights. And in the midtones dial, obviously that's somewhere between the shadows and the highlights, it's the midtones. So if we look on the master dial, the right hand side is where you would change your exposure. With your brightness, the higher up, the brighter it is, the lower down, the darker it is. If you want to recenter it, just double tap on the arrow. And on the left side, this is your saturation levels. The higher up, the more saturated the colours are, and the lower down, the less saturated, until they finally remove all the colour and it's black and white. In the centre here are colours, and if you want to change the overall colour tone of your picture, you would move it in the direction that you want to. Let's say, for example, you wanted to make it more orangey, you would just pull and move until you get where you want. So how are we going to adjust this using the dials to help us? Well, the first thing I like to do is I like to change the exposure, and I can see that the 100 line is where everything is completely white, and the 0 line is where everything is completely black. So you want to push your highlights up as close to the 100 as you can. So if we go over to the highlights dial and we start pushing up, and keep your eye on the luma until the top of it just hits, and that's round about here. We're maybe going over a little bit there, so let's pull that down just a touch, and that's good for the highlights. And on the shadow side, we want to pull that down until it's at 0 or close to 0. Now you're only making tiny little changes, but already if I switch this off and on, you'll see what the difference is just with those tiny little changes. Now it's contrasty, but it's far too dark now. To bring up the brightness here into the mid-tones and pull it up until you gain back the brightness that you had. So now it's as bright as it was, but you've now got a bit more contrast in your shadows and highlights, and it just looks better already. And the other thing to think about is the overall tone. Now to me this picture looks a bit blue, and I took this in summer, so it shouldn't really be blue, and I can tell here that the blue is much higher than the red, and that tells me that the temperature of this clip is cool, and I don't want that. I don't want it to be particularly warm, but I want it to be balanced. And the way I'm going to do that is if I go down to the temperature here slider, and if I slide it to the warm side, which is to the right, you'll notice that the blue goes down and the red starts to come up. And I can look at the RGB parade until I can get them balanced, but also keep an eye on the picture to get it where I creatively want it to be. So it looks good to me just about there. And already we're looking at a much more balanced and better picture. And if we look at this on the full screen, and maybe you're thinking, is that any different from what it was? Well, we can do a side-by-side comparison to see. And here's the before and after. So in the before and after comparison, I actually think that the water in the before clip looks better. So I'm going to make some more changes, and I'm going to try and make the water look a bit more blue. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to add a hue and saturation curve. I'm going to the hue versus saturation. If I pick the eyedropper and just click on the area that the colour I want to change, I can then adjust just that colour. And already you can see that the water is now a lot more blue. So there we have the loch now looking a lot more blue, and actually the sky has kind of blued up as well. So if we go back and we look at the side-by-side comparisons, I'm now happier.
with that.
So that's how I do it. Probably not the best way to do things, but it works for me at the moment. I'll keep learning and I'll keep watching videos, and I'll maybe even sign up to a few classes and learn how to do even better. But at the moment, that's how I get my footage to look just a wee bit better than it does straight out of the drone. If you're not sure about what filters to use, there's a video up here that will tell you how to do that, and this one down here will show you where to set your smoothness and your speed on your sticks in the DJI app control, which should help to get you some good footage in the first place. So if you like that, give us a thumbs up. I'm out of here.